Let's get started. My name is Joyce Raimondo, and as most of you know, I am the education coordinator at the Pollock Krasner House and Study Center, and we're a national landmark in East Hampton, located about 100 miles east of New York City. And tonight, I am hosting this remotely from my home, and we're celebrating women's history in the United States, bringing these amazing artists who happen to be female to a worldwide audience. So tonight we're going to spotlight Yayoi Kusama, who is today the top-selling female artist in the entire world. And Yayoi Kusama has a story of extreme adversity, overcoming trauma from her childhood, overcoming sexism in the art world, and many other obstacles, but she was truly unstoppable. So I'm going to do a little screen share, weaving in some stories about her biography and her art, and I'll stop periodically to ask your opinions or if you have any questions. And then towards the end, we're going to leave time to do a project based on Yayoi Kusama's work. Okay? So let's get started. So Yayoi Kusama was born in 1929. She is alive today, working in Japan. She's 93 years old. She now lives in Tokyo. And Yayoi Kusama is truly an example of infinite creativity. She is a painter, a printmaker. She does film, performance art, happenings, sculpture, and even commercial art. Her artwork has recently been paired with Louis Vuitton. And if you go into one of their stores or their pop-up stores, was recently in New York City, you will see Yayoi Kusama's art filling their stores, their pocketbooks, everything about their brand. So let me just minimize this, move this down here. Okay, good. So Yayoi Kusama is best known in terms of her style for these polka dots, okay? Whether it be painting polka dots on herself, on other people, on objects, on surfaces, on paintings, images, abstract art. You will see these dots in Yayoi Kusama's paintings. Now, what is the meaning behind the dots and where did they derive from? So unfortunately, Yayoi Kusama had a very traumatic childhood that we really wouldn't wish on any human being. Her father had a lot of infidelity, and the mother used to make her spy on the father, looking through a peephole and report back. And so as a child, she would watch her father with his lovers. And her mother was also not supportive of her art at all. And so she would go to school, she would paint pumpkins, and she loved that. And her mother would take the drawings away and sometimes destroy them. So she had a very difficult childhood, to say the least. And at the age of 10, she started seeing dots. And it's hard for me to explain this, so I'm going to let her explain it in her own words. But she says, our Earth is only one polka dot among a million stars in the cosmos. Polka dots are a way to infinity. When we obliterate nature and our bodies with polka dots, we become part of the unity of our environment. Now, what do you think? What comes to mind when you hear this statement? Does anybody want to unmute and just, what does this mean to you? Dots are a way to infinity. We become part of the unity of our environment. What do you think? What does this mean to you? We're not saying this is what she meant, but what comes to your mind when you hear this? Or are you just completely baffled by this? Anybody?
I'm baffled.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Anybody else?
I just, it was an astrophysicist, and he said we're all stardust because we came, the star exploded, and all of its little pieces made, like we're part of that. That's where we all come from. And he says we're all stardust.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Joyce. Anybody else?
I think she's talking about the infinity of stars, that when you go outside at night, you see, you can't count the stars, you're infinite. And I think her being abused like that made her feel that she's as infinite, as tiny as a polka dot, and as unimportant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anybody else?
I think of it kind of like atoms and molecules.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put them together, it's infinite.
Yeah, it's really interesting because this dovetails with like Jackson Pollock and the abstract expressionist in the US and the early abstract artists. This idea that everything is unified in the universe and that everything is comprised of energy, right? Not matter. Now, I'm not saying that's what she exactly meant when she said that, but that's what I think of when I hear this. And everybody else also, it's interpretive as well, right?
I just want to point out that this picture you're showing us, if she was born 1929, she was just 10. So she was already very talented at age 10. Look at that. The face with the nose, the eyes are, that's incredibly talented for a 10-year-old.
Absolutely. And the pumpkins, by the way, that I mentioned that she was painting in school, she drew these pumpkins throughout her life. She became very, very famous for this pumpkin imagery, and she started it in childhood.
I'd also say that a circle is just a flat, two-surface globe or polka dot, planet Earth. And the circle is also known for, infinity. There's no beginning and there's no end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a spiritual idea behind this too, right?
Hi, Joyce.
Yeah.
Hi, Les. When I was taking notes, because otherwise I'll forget this, the idea of the peephole came to mind, that, the circle, there was some psychological connection with her having to spy on her father and looking through that peephole, and that, I'm assuming it was a circular peephole like the ones we have now. There has to be some connection with her ocular, view and the circle and the trauma of it. Mm-hmm. And maybe even when she was watching these things, maybe she split off into because we know, I'm not going to get ahead of you. I'm sure you're going to mention it, but we know, her problem, her mental illness. So there must have been some splitting off in her mind as a young child looking at this, which was totally inappropriate and abusive. Mm-hmm. And then that, that peephole and the circle and, what her mind created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just my take on it.
Well, no, that's exactly right. In fact, let me go. Why is it stuck? Wait, I got to go to the next slide, but now it's stuck. Hold on. Oh, now it went 2 slides. Okay. Yeah. So where did this derive from? She did have a break. It was a hallucinatory break. And there's different people report this in different ways. I've read that she was staring at a tablecloth and she started to see dots all over the room. In the documentary that was made about her a few years ago, I recall it said that she was in a field of red flowers, laying down. And all of a sudden, a vast field of flowers. And all of a sudden, these little spots of red just filled the entire universe. But she goes further. She says, one day I was looking at the red flower patterns of the tablecloth on a table. And when I looked up, I saw the same pattern covering the ceiling, the windows and the walls, and finally all over the room, my body and the universe. I felt as if I had begun to self-obliterate, to revolve in the infinity of endless time and the absoluteness of space, and be reduced to nothingness. As I realized it was actually happening and not just in my imagination, I was frightened. And she goes on to say how she started running up the stairs and she tripped and she felt, this is like terrifying. She's hallucinating. right? And yet at the same time, there is this idea of, she says, the absoluteness of space, right? So that is also a spiritual idea. But as human beings on the planet, we have mechanisms in place so that we could realize ourselves as separate, where we realize we're one, but we also mentally can realize we're separate from objects, we're separate from other people physically. Does that make sense? It's both things at the same time, right? We're separate and we're unified at the same time. So this continues throughout her life. And her paintings are actually, you could say it's a window into the world of how she's seeing, but it's not a visual problem, it's a mental problem. And she also, well, she said here she would describe the patterns are moving, and apparently she also had auditory hallucinations, and she became obsessive compulsive. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and today she lives in a mental residency. So we'll get to that part. This one is later on. This is called a net. Rather than doing the painting dots, she's doing the reverse. She's painting around the dots, right? She's painting these small, tiny little strokes so that the negative space is similar to a dot. Does that make sense? Now, Yayoi Kusama is a great example for people who do have challenges, which is everybody, right? People some more than others. She says, I fight pain, anxiety, and fear every day. And the only method I have found that relieved my illness is to keep creating art. I followed the thread of art and somehow discovered a path that would allow me to live. So it's really, really, it's just beautiful, right? That art is, I believe art saves lives. It's a higher realm. Sometimes art goes beyond illness, right? It goes beyond the flaws of a human being or beyond the limitations of being human, right? It's almost like there's a higher force that steps in for that person. Anybody agree or disagree with that? Anybody ever experienced that?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. You want to
Without
describe it?
it, I don't know where I'd be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In
You know,
what
it
sense?
speaks to me and I speak to it, and that's it. You know, much of my time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I was telling my friend today that when I'm painting, a lot of my troubles seem to be lifted. They don't seem so important, you know?
Or you're either forgetting them or you're expressing them in your painting.
that too, it gives you a way to express. So in Yayoi Kusama's case, I don't know why this is getting stuck. It's giving her a way to express her experience, right? Her unique experience. And here's an example of one of these net paintings that are like spectacularly beautiful. Now, how is this similar or different to, let's say, Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner and that era of the 1950s abstract expressionism? It's the same in the fact that it's all over painting. You have an all over pattern throughout, right? It's also similar in that you can clearly see the artist's mark. You can see, if you saw it in real life, you can see the little smudge of the brush or the smudge of her hand, right? Sometimes they're even slightly three-dimensional in terms of the little mark of the thickness of the paint. But how it's different is hers is much more controlled than a Jackson Pollock who's dripping paint, right? Or a Lee Krasner who's doing action painting. And they're quite beautiful. She does these in all different formats and all different colors as well.
It looks like knitting. Like when I knit cables, it has that same, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
It's absolutely beautiful, Joyce. And I think similar to knitting, it has that one by one quality, you know, it's like you knit, and then you come out with, it's a repetitive action. And then over time, it accumulates into an object. And similarly with this technique, it's a repetitive process that accumulates. Does that make sense? You might
Mhm.
say also this has an obsessive quality to it, to be able to do this over and over again throughout your life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if you can channel it. Okay. So here's an interesting story. Here, Yayoi Kusama is in Japan, right? And she writes to George O'Keeffe in America. And she's like, oh, I'm thinking of coming to America. And she says, I'm only on the first step of the long, difficult life of being a painter. Will you kindly show me the way? And O'Keeffe is famous at this point. And O'Keeffe writes back to Kusama and says, in this country, an artist has a hard time making a living. But she doesn't entirely discourage her. So Kusama comes to America. She's 27 years old. She first settles in Seattle for a year, then she comes to New York. It's a glitch. I don't know why this, okay. And, whoop, it's getting stuck for some reason. I don't know. Hold on. Okay. And she's not only painting, she's doing all sorts of different kinds of art forms. So one of the things that Yayoi Kusama is famous for is her infinity mirror rooms. This is called installation art. And it's art you can actually walk into. It's installed in a room. The entire room becomes the art. So she often does these dot patterns, and then she has a mirrored room. So when you step in it, it goes on for infinity visually, right? And the one on the left is 1965, but she's continued doing these. I don't know if anybody has gone to any of these rooms. It's also really fun. It's just visually really appealing. Clearly, she's showing infinity, and she's showing her experience of this, being surrounded and almost encased with these dots. Now, there are several examples of Yayoi Kusama's groundbreaking work and male counterparts who at that time saw her work, did something similar, and then guess who got the credit? On the left is Yayoi Kusama, and on the right is Lucas Samaras. He visits a studio, and then, the Infinity Room, and then he really becomes famous for his Infinity Room, okay? And she was sort of on the back burner of fame until the 1980s. Here's Andy Warhol. So Yayoi Kusama makes this room with this boat that's filled with these three-dimensional forms that look sort of like phalluses, and they're called accumulations. And then she fills the entire room with images that are printed of this boat. You see that back there? It's almost like wallpaper. Andy Warhol goes to the exhibit and he praises her, right? I think he even said to her, I think you should do a cow or something. And she's like, I have no interest in cows. And then he does his wallpaper, his prints rather, with the cow. And he becomes, of course, a rising star of happenings and this really unconventional pop art in the 1960s. And she doesn't get any credit for it. Next, she does these, as I said, these are really amazing sculptures. They're called accumulations. And this is what's called soft sculptures. So she's actually sewing, and then she's stuffing these different forms to make them three-dimensional, and then adhering them, in this case, to a couch. But she does all different kinds of accumulations. And it does have a sexual, phallic feeling to it, imagery to it, right? So she has this piece in an exhibition, and the artist Klaus Oldenburg, he's next to her in the exhibition. He has like this paper mache pop art piece. Well, who wants to guess what happens? So it's really not funny.
Well, he certainly got credit.
Yeah, so here's Klaus Oldenburg's soft sculpture, which is created several months later. And he becomes the rising star of pop art, who is a household name known for his groundbreaking soft sculpture. But you can trace it back to Yayoi Kusama. Unfortunately, we do see this theme with a lot of women artists who don't get credit for not only their work, but also the influence that they had on their male counterparts. So Yayoi Kusama is not pleased about this, right? She's extremely upset and she kind of goes into hiding because of it. She starts to hide her work. She's so afraid someone's going to steal it. And it's really tough times for her financially. So now you can imagine she's a Japanese woman living at this point in New York City. English, I don't even know if she spoke fluent English. You know, English wasn't her first language. And barely eking out a living. And she also is dealing with her own mental illness. And she does eventually, she winds up having a breakdown and tries to kill herself. It was just too much for her. But let's get back to the art. Now, this is called Narcissus Garden. And she was rejected from the biennial, which is, you know, the really major showcase of contemporary art. So what she does boldly on the right there is she makes these metallic spheres, stands outside the pavilion, and sells them to people walking by without permission. So she's making money and she's getting notoriety, she's getting publicity, and eventually the authorities at the biennial come out and tell her to stop. But when you see Yayoi Kusama's work today, you're going to see this installed in many, many locations. So
I say if at the National County Museum of Art, they have 3 exhibits of these stainless steel spheres. One of them, when you first come in, is on the ground, like on a hill. Then there's like a totem pole in front of the museum, and then there's a smaller one on the grass there. So this exactly, you know, her stuff.
Very nice. Anybody else?
Well, anybody could go to the Nassau County Museum. That's right here, you know, and you don't even have to go in. These things are outside. It's absolutely based on this.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Feedback on mute yourself, please. Yeah, I went to, often these are also sometimes temporarily installed, like at the Botanical Gardens in the Bronx, New York. They had an exhibit of her work, which is often environmental sculpture. So it could be in a pond, it could be dots painted on a tree, it could be a giant pumpkin sculpture in the middle of a forest, right? It's integrated into the environment. And this is what's called an art happening. So you have to imagine, this is the 1960s, right? And what do we recall when we think about the 1960s? What are the big major events?
Oh, free, letting loose, what have you.
Woodstock.
Woodstock. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Woodstock, drugs, music, right?
Assassinations.
What's that?
Assassinations.
The assassination.
Martin Luther King and JFK and Robert Kennedy. Terrible time.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And of course, Vietnam, right? So Yayoi Kusama held as a very core belief the idea of personal freedom. She grew up in Japan during World War II. And as a child, or like, I think she was like 13, she worked sewing parachutes. And she would hear the bombs going off, and I mean, I don't know if it was bombs, but like planes and different aspects of the war. And she said that this experience made her really value personal freedom. And so here, I'm not sure if this is the exact photo, but she did one of these happenings to rebel against the Vietnam War, and one that was advocating for the rights of gay people. Now, when this gets back to Japan, this doesn't go over well, right? This is pretty radical. And she's considered like a disgrace in her own country at that time. So, for example, in her high school, they literally take her name off the alumni roster. So it definitely is a twist of fate that today she is one of the highest selling female artists living in Japan, right? She overcame all this rejection, but it was not an easy road for her. She did have 3 breakdowns where she tried to kill herself. Now, this is a film. Let me just, let me get to, it's really long, so I just want to speed it ahead here. Just to show you the range of her creativity, right? She's also a filmmaker. This is very similar to Andy Warhol in terms of he was also working with all different media. Okay, we're going to stop there. The films, like Andy Warhol, like his films, even though they're totally different, they're not narrative films. They don't tell a story, right? This is called conceptual art. And there's different phases throughout the film. And I'm sure you could find this on YouTube, Kusama's Self-Obliteration, 1967. Okay, so this theme of the obliteration with the dots, it takes many different forms, okay? This one again is an installation. And here we have Kusama's paintings, right? And this one kind of combines the net technique with the polka dots. Some of her paintings also hinge between abstraction and representation.
Joyce, can I ask you, are these acrylic or oil?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think the earlier work was oil, but I looked that up. I'm not sure if the later work might be acrylic. And the scale of her work, some of her paintings are monumental, and some of them are very small. But you could see there's a love of nature in these. And these are all handmade.
Oh, wow.
They're stunning. They have she has a very wide popular appeal. This is her more recently. She's 93 years old today, so 1994. Well, the yellow pumpkin, I think that's a more recent photo of her though.
Her yellow pumpkin art's very, very popular in the elementary classroom.
Yeah. And also her items, can be easily sold. They like when they had the exhibit at the botanical gardens, right? The merchandising is quite popular. Household items, clothing, all sorts of things. Any thoughts on these? Anything come to mind for any inspiration, any ideas? Does anybody want to say anything that I left out?
Oh. Some of it, so it looks like we call it, amoebas and
Amoebas.
cells and
Yeah,
all that. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
This one looks like gears. The way they fit into each other is like a set of gears. That's what it makes me think of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I believe this is a part of a mosaic that's at the one of the train station. I forget the name that just opened.
Oh, yeah, in New York City.
And I'm thinking about germs all over the subway. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it
yeah.
really made me think of, knowing where it's at and, the relationship to the transportation system.
Actually, that's really interesting because I'm sure also a lot of the images were designed before COVID, and now it has like a different meaning, right? We're a little more germ conscious now. This also reminds me a little bit of like Aboriginal art, all those dots,
Yeah.
which I love. So there's a wonderful documentary that's available on like any smart TV. You can rent it. It's Kusama Infinity. And below, we see this big mural down here where it says New York. Yayoi Kusama, as I said, her work is paired with Louis Vuitton. And I'm going to show you a video which goes over a little bit of the controversy behind this. Let me find it. We're not going to watch the entire video, but this is pretty strange.
In a collaboration with this famous Japanese artist, Yayoi Kusama, have utilized her iconic pop art dots and have created a unique collection. The pre-launch began in Japan and China where it was first dropped, but now can be seen globally. While walking down central Paris, you will see people gathering with their iPhones recording the windows of the Louis Vuitton flagship. In these windows, you can see a woman painting polka dots behind the glass facing the audience. However, once you approach closer, you can see the person's actions are repetitive and mechanical. The artist's eyes would follow you individually as you approach closer to the glass and give you what some might call a scary stare. Only then you realize it is a robot. Another striking element of the campaign that is turning heads, or should we say raising them, is along the Champs-Élysées. A huge figure the size of the Louis Vuitton building itself grasps hold of the exterior walls. The famous bob cut provides realization that this is an inflated model of Kusama. The huge figure brings the building into an embrace, almost as if it is thanking Louis Vuitton for the opportunity to work with them. The enormity of this is hard to avoid, and with similar figures placed all over the world, it should be asked, why the necessity for all this grandeur? What has
Okay, we're going to stop the video there, but I'd like to ask your thoughts on this. She said it's controversial. What would be controversial about that?
Like, does she have someone taking care of her affairs, or is she able to do that?
That's a good question. I'm sure that she is such a huge, she has galleries representing her. And
Okay.
of course she has agents and things like that. I don't know the specifics of her financial setup, being that she's in but she wouldn't be doing, when you get to that level, you're going to have people representing you.
She has aides. I saw a program about her where she has, assistants helping her. She can't lift this stuff. This stuff's heavy. They bring every little thing. Her wish is their command. Whatever she wants, they do for her.
She's 93. Yeah, of course. And she's 93 years old.
Yeah.
So basically, she lives in the residency which is a mental health facility in Tokyo. And then she has her studio that's nearby. But she is 93 years old. I'm sure she has a lot of help physically. And also, she has gallery representation. And
I think they made a room for her in the facility. They have studios probably right there.
Mhm.
But she has
Joyce, do you know what her state of mind is? I mean, is she happy, despite what she went through to be so successful?
I'm going to show a video. Let's hear it in her own words after we're done with the discussion. How about that?
Okay. All right.
Right?
Joyce, is there, I'm sorry. Is
think
there
that-
some sort of exploitation going on there? Because, she is elderly. I mean, my mom's around the same age, and, she's in a psychiatric facility, and she's probably medicated because otherwise she wouldn't be able to function with, her, all of the things that she has. And she's very disciplined, right, to do her artwork every day. But can she really give consent? Can she really say, yeah, I want all my polka dots everywhere? Or, do you know what I'm saying? Like, is she really in command of her own affairs?
I don't know the answer to that question. Okay, so I can't answer that. But I think,
It's interesting they made her a robot.
Yeah,
you
my
know,
impression is that if you're a disabled artist, like agency over your own self-representation is important. And when I saw that, I thought I would be upset if someone represented me in that way.
and why is that?
Because
Not that I'm arguing, I just want you to go further with that idea.
it seems a little dehumanizing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I was wondering if it isn't what she can do basically as performance art now.
Yeah, that's why you could see it in different ways, right? You could see it that it popularizes her art. You could see it that it represents her as an artist. You could see it that it draws, the public in, and all those are good things. Or you could see it, on the other hand, as exploitation in some ways of someone who has a mental illness, who has obsessive compulsive disorder, who has hallucinations, and that person's mental illness is shown in this robotic form with this strange stare. People can see it in different ways, right?
I think it's amazing that everybody we all feel the need to take care of her, make sure she's okay. Because we talk about other artists, we know, they okay?
No, and the other thing also is, well, there's a couple of things. One is, I know plenty of artists, believe me, who are in their 90s, who are 100% able to take care of themselves in every way. I mean, some people just are, really. My friend's father was 100, he's 100, he still is, he's 107, he takes care of himself, he lives alone. Like, just is true. It depends on the person. And also, even though these dots come about because of her experience with mental illness, she is also a trained artist. She's not a naive artist. She was trained, she went to school in Japan. She was trained in a type of Japanese traditional painting called Nihonga. Okay, and then she was exposed to the contemporary art of her era, and she took hold of that, right? So she's not like a naive artist just working in isolation. Okay, very brilliant.
I love it. I think that the Louis Vuitton ad is just really getting her name out to people that aren't necessarily artists. I think it's bright, it's colorful, it's eye-catching. On her social media, all of her pictures are of that same face, not smiling, looking straight. It seemed like a persona, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I just have to hope that she does have people that take care of her affairs and know that this is something that she would want. And it seemed almost like it would be with her other performance art, and and things that are controversial and things that are big, and look at this. And that's exactly what this is.
Mhm.
I think it's fantastic. And I love it that we all have different views on that.
No, that's why art is thought provoking. Good art provokes conversation. Cece says her artwork has been stolen again, this time with her as a person, her image included. So, and of course, Cece, and with all the sales of Louis Vuitton and these bags and everything else, I'm sure she's making a lot of money from that as well, of course, right?
But I think she's doing what she loves to do. And certainly nobody's making her do it. She doesn't have to feed herself and cook and this is all she has to do. She's doing what she loves. Nobody's making her. I'm sure she loves doing this. She's doing it because this is what she's trained to do and loves to do. And I don't know what else she would do with herself if she didn't do this. I'm sure it brings her satisfaction.
How about this? On that note, let's hear what Yayoi has to say. Okay, that's that. Because I do have a video here. She's going to be speaking Japanese. So you're going to have to look at the captions pretty carefully because of the fact that the captions are light. So let's pull this one up. Let's hear what Yayoi has to say.
若い人々はたくさんの助言を持っておりますが、その助言は人からいただくものでなく、自分自身が苦労し、戦って、その中から生まれ出る助言こそ本物だと思っております。皆さん、大いに考えて、大いに戦って、人生の中で素晴らしい助言を自分の心の中から叩き出して、それを皆に、全世界にまき散らして、そして素晴らしい人生と素晴らしい世界を築きたいと私たちは痛切に思っておりますので、皆さん大いに一緒に戦いましょう。それが私の芸術家としての一番大切な自分の思いであります。私の次に続けてくる多くの皆さん、私は自身芸術の先生ではありません。皆さんに望むところは、皆さんも大いに自分自身を開拓して素晴らしい人間像をあなたの一生の間に立ち上げていきたい。それは芸術の力を持って、その創作の中から生まれ出てほしいというのが私の願いですが、これは結局命を込めた私の生の賛美、そして人間愛の最高の素晴らしい世界を作り出したいといった私の切なる願いによって私は芸術家として今も生きております。
So I think that
that almost makes you cry when you look at that. And I think our heart goes out to her. A, she's living. B, she wasn't taken care of as a child. And C, we want her to be okay as long as she's among us. You know, it's very touching. It's touching.
Anybody else?
Very touching.
She's cool.
She's really cool. She's a very good example, Joyce. She's really, what's cool? What do you think is cool about her?
Even despite all her stuff, she's still positive. Like, he still has this positive, and she's that old, and she went through all that stuff, and then that her art is just, anyways, just hearing her talk is like,
yeah,
you know, it's got the little red egg, and she's centered. You know? Okay, bye.
Very good. One more?
Well, her art pulled her through all of her trauma, and she turns it around and becomes the most giving person as a result. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Sure is. This is why I do what I do. This is why I love art. It's the power. She says at the end, right? It's the power of art. And then she mentions love at the end. It's the power of art. I believe art can transform any pain into something beautiful. And I don't mean days of flowers. I mean the beauty of the resilience of the human spirit. And then it's the hero's journey. That's what Joseph Campbell says. The hero's journey is to, you know, take all the baggage from your childhood, from society, all the obstacles, all the false beliefs that we're taught, and then go through that and find your own voice and give back. And that to me is what Yayoi Kusama is.
Big forehead.
Okay. So on that note, I thought it would be fun to, we're not going to copy her dots unless you really want to. Of course, you could do that. But I thought, what about if we think of the theme of infinity? What does infinity mean to you? How would you picture infinity, right? It could be infinite love. It could be infinite spirit. It could be infinite space. It could be the cosmos, right? It could be just infinite creativity, right? Or expansion. How would you visualize that? There's a lot of symbols for this. There's the infinity symbol, that, right? It goes like that, right? There's the spiral. In her case, she's using these dots that just like expand out. So I'm wondering, how would you visualize infinity? What does that mean to you? And if you're not sure, just see what comes out. So for me, I'm going to go with the spiral because I started this yesterday when we did our meditation. And to me, the spiral is a nice, it's ever expanding. It just keeps, it goes on and on and on. It just keeps expanding. Okay. So why don't we work quietly for about 10 minutes and then we'll check in and share. If anyone has questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat.
It's funny, before you showed your spiral, I said, that's to me, the ultimate in a unlimited use of space is the spiral. And then you were kind enough to once suggest to me that I buy these watercolor pens,
I
which
love
did,
it,
and I
Sean.
love them. So I
I
said,
love
that's so
them.
easy, use them so quickly. And then it was very easy to do. And it was just fun. It's a nice memory of this lovely program you did today.
Oh, I love it, Sean. It's so playful and it's also really interesting visually. It's like some of them are popping out, some of them are receding.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very interesting.
it was easy and fun. Thank you.
That's okay. Yeah, very nice.
I had one.
And let's see, who else?
That's me.
Mia Elwinda.
Pretty too.
That's me.
Okay, we'll have time to get to everybody. How
What-
about Elwinda? Interesting, Elwinda. Hold it still and hold it up a little higher and then over to the right, like towards your, yeah, perfect. Okay, so tell us, oh no, you wait, go back over towards your ring. Yeah, keep going. Okay, good. So tell us about that one.
This is so interesting. I feel like I'm doing at the eye doctor, forward back. But you remember in school, there was always a period of time where there was a long arrow and you really never knew where it was going, but they said it was infinite. This is infinite. And you were like, well, what is that? And so I did my arrows. And the other thing I wanted to say is, listen, this has been one of your best meetings. So we're not going to let that person steal our joy. We're not going to let them. I think this has been great.
Wonderful.
You're the best, Elwinda. And I love that. And I love that also your childhood memory, because I have the same memory, not with arrows, but I remember sitting talking to my father and being like, what is infinity? I was fascinated with the idea of infinity, right, when you're a kid. But that's very clever, the idea of an arrow that just points to infinity, goes on and on forever. Very interesting concept. And let's see, there is someone who put something in the chat. Shelley, we'll get to that at the end. Joyce, laundry.
Hey.
Oh, too lovely.
Very nice.
Wow. It has to go way back here.
Yeah, hold it still, everybody. Hold it still. But very nice. Yeah. I like
it's
that.
Markers. It's much orange. There we go.
It's really beautiful. It looks like you have this kind of swirly loop-de-loop thing, but then
I did the circles.
It also starts to look like a flower. It looks like petals in a flower.
Definitely.
Very nice. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job, Joyce in Canada. Who else? Rita Brandon? I mean, Bridget. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, that's a really powerful.
Oh, there it is.
Very nice. Move it
So
over to the
it's,
middle. Yeah, you could see it, right? So tell us about that one.
Well, I started with the infinity sign in the middle, and then I just started thinking how much more I could fit into each area. And I just started to go. I think I could do this probably for hours.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And also I like the way the infinity sign starts to look like eyes or looks like a web. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Very nice. And the way you drew it, it looks like it's because that dent in the line almost makes it look like it's caving in.
I tried not to take my pen off the line until I started with the blue color, and then
yeah,
see what else comes out of it.
Yeah, no, I love this. The creativity is really, really great. Who else would like to share? Alex in Germany?
Yes, hi. It's
How
very
are you?
small. I just used fine liners.
Mhm.
I continued from yesterday when we did the spirally thing.
That's
And
beautiful.
thanks. When I was a kid, I used to do like paintings made out of these squiggles, like just black squiggles, and I used to make shapes out of them.
Yeah, very
Like,
nice. And
it's
it
very
almost starts to look like birds or floral or different forms from here, leaves. It starts to look like actual representational things. Yeah, very nice. Very delicate the way you did that. Thank you, Alex. Good job in Germany. Let's see. I love how I have all friends. We're all friends from all over the world. Anybody else? How about Luann with Beret? You want to share anything, Luann?
Yeah, for some reason I couldn't get inspired on paper, but I'm going to promise myself and you that in the next few days I'm going to do something. I just couldn't get inspired. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, so don't worry. No worries with that. But sometimes, there's an expression that in art, and I know I'm not saying this to correct you, it's like sometimes don't wait for inspiration, just start.
Do it. Yeah.
Just do it. Don't wait.
Do it.
Art is perspiration, not inspiration. It's like just start. Just get out a pencil and you just don't never know what could come out.
See what happens. Yes, I
Mhm.
will. I will.
Almost like a doodle.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Hi there, greetings from the UK.
Oh, nice, Haley. Tell us about that one.
So for me, it's like I can't reach infinity because the page isn't infinite. So at some point I'm going to finish this.
It's really beautiful. It's really interesting how these repeated circles or these repeated marks in everyone's page, it starts to shift, your eye visually shifts. It has this illusion of being deep in some spots and three-dimensional waving. So if you look at it from far away, I think you'll see what I mean. It's really beautiful.
Did you use a magic marker? What did you use to do those?
One of those pencil ink pens. I don't know what it's called.
Really beautiful. Thank you. I'll tell you what, I'm going to screen share. I'm going to show somebody sent in one here. Let me see if I can pull this up. Okay. This is Shell. So Shell, you want to tell us about this one?
Yeah, basically I was thinking about the infinite cycle of the seasons. And so those are my weird curled up leaves from autumn and the new daffodil shoots from spring.
Oh, it's really beautiful. Then also they look like cocoons a little bit,
Yeah, they're just a weird thing that I'm obsessed with. I draw them all the time.
Yeah, well, it's a nice image because it can remind a person of a lot of different things. They look like seeds, cocoons, little creatures,
Yep, you can make them look like seashells too. Yep.
Yeah,
they're fun.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Someone around who can. Oh, Crystal, nice.
So I was fooling around with cleaning off a brush that had acrylic paint and ended up making some collage paper, which I very, very rarely do, but that's what I then used for these infinity symbols.
It's really nice.
And I loved hearing about the line with the arrow because I think basically 2 points in space define a line, but a line technically, I believe, does not have ends. It goes on forever. So anyway, thank you. This was a really fun program.
No, and that image is beautiful. It has a lot of movement in it. And also I love the brush stroke, and then they almost look like they're stamped. The way you did.
Yeah, they're cutouts. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
Joyce, I can share mine if you'd like.
Who said that?
Leah.
Leah.
I'm right here. It's in pencil.
Very nice. Tell us about that one.
Okay. I labeled it as we're all infinitely connected.
Can you move the camera over a little? Like, okay, that's
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's beautiful. And also, again, especially on Zoom, because it's reducing the size, when you have concentric circles like that, it could look like almost at one point like you're looking through a tunnel, but then it could look like the circles are just like one inside the other. So there's a lot you could do to play with that. You could even blow that up into a painting, add color.
Yes. Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Just want to say thank you so much. This is really, really wonderful.
Yes. Yeah, I know. You know what? This artist she's special.
It's
She's
wonderful.
so
I made
fun.
another one just very quickly, if you could see that, Joyce. This is Shani here. I made another one.
Very nice,
I
Shani.
took the markers and I swirled them around, you know.
I like it. It has like a whirling movement.
Yeah, so
Very nice.
they're all running out of ink. Whatever
Well,
I used.
You
Yeah,
used it to your advantage.
yeah. Well, thank you. You gave us so many wonderful ideas, and the things other people made are just wonderful. And you gave a fabulous presentation. So thank you so
nice
much.
seeing you, Shani.
Thank you.
And everybody, I do hope, of course, that you get to see Yayoi Kusama's work in person if she comes to your area. And I hope this makes you want to learn more and even investigate some of the questions that arose, and just have great respect for people who have different kinds of illnesses and are able to have a productive, happy life and give to others. And sometimes even the illness actually sparks creativity. That's really the amazing thing about art as well.
It's true.
And of course, we wouldn't wish hardship on anyone, but it is interesting how sometimes that pushes a human being to create through that, you know. Go to pkhouse.org and you can sign up. The April one might not be on there yet, but you could go to pkhouse.org for the upcoming workshops. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to our wonderful Pollock Krasner, Stony Brook University intern, Juliet, who helped put together the presentation. So thank you, Juliet, for that. And have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are.
Thank you.
For coming.
Thank you, Joyce. Really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know
Thank
everybody
you.
likes
Bye-bye.
seeing the shares too.
Thanks so much.
Thank